Well, welcome to all of you who are here at ALA Annual and to those of you who are watching via Twitter. I am Betha Gutsche. I am a WebJunction Programs Manager at OCLC, and I am here to talk to you about the very complex topic of design thinking in 15 minutes. So, design thinking, it's almost a buzzword. There's just been a lot of conversation about it over the past years, originating actually outside of library world, more in industrial design. And there are just so many various ways in which it has been interpreted and implied, and it turns out there's really no single definition of what it is, because it's mostly a mindset. It's a set of tools and strategies, very flexible tools, that help us think about the world in a different way, and especially think about problems and solutions in a different way. There is an excellent resource, the Design Thinking for Libraries Toolkit, which puts it into the library context. But it's not prescriptive. There's nothing prescriptive about a design thinking approach because it depends so much on context. The essence is it's also known as human-centered design, and so the essence is this focus on the user and centering the user in the library experience. Whoop. So, in my mind, the essence of design thinking is about discovery and experimentation. So first, thinking about discovery, this is really gaining a deeper understanding of who your community members are, who it is that you are interacting with, keeping that key principle in mind that the community is the expert, and really understanding that this whole discovery process isn't something that you do for a short period of time and then you're done with it. It's an ongoing process because it's about building relationships. And the importance of that is if the community really feels like they are integral to the planning process of the library, this is a community of people who are invested in the library's success over the long term. So really thinking about the whole design thinking process is very iterative. It's not, we've done this phase and we're done. So there are a number of tools available for doing this kind of discovery process. It's very common for libraries to have done surveys. Probably most libraries have done some kind of a survey. There are real advantages to that. You can really reach a wide audience. For me, the very primary disadvantage is that it avoids personal, direct contact with the people that you want to connect with. And understanding that community discovery is not about analysis and gathering data. It is about forming those connections with community members on an individual level, starting a conversation and beginning to build relationships and finding collaboration. Collaboration is very important throughout for effective design thinking application because you're working with people, not trying to design things for people. So there are a huge array of tools. WebJunction has collected a small selection of them. If you go to this URL, oc.lc/discovery-tools, you'll find more details about this and get you going on that. Whoop. So the experimentation aspect of design thinking is this idea of keeping your processes open and fluid so that you are able to evolve and adapt to things as they change around you. And design thinking has a number of processes and tools for doing this, starting with ideation. This is a really critical part of design thinking because these strategies help all of us think outside of our very conventional thinking about the ways we've done things, the kinds of things we feel like we're limited by, and it provides strategies that really help you expand possibilities, sort of dissect ideas to look what's underneath them and really understand if a community tells you something, what's really underneath that and what's sort of related to that the library might be able to address. And then prototyping is a really important phase to help you avoid getting stuck down a path that may not be the best choice. So prototyping can start with just creating very rudimentary physical models that take your conceptual idea and make it visible. And this is another stage at which you can interact with community and get their input, their ideas. It just starts to trigger a different way of thinking about things because they're seeing it in a physical model. There's also what I call action prototyping, where you sort of try out a process and just do it with a small audience and see how it works, which really leads into iteration. And this is, rather than committing the big bucks and buying all the stuff and getting something going, approach it at a smaller scale. Do some pilot projects and then maybe scale up larger, and then once at each stage you're getting feedback and you have this flexible opportunity to make adjustments and adaptations. So keeping it all very flexible. So I want to give you some practical applications of how this has been used in libraries, and I'm going to start with the Small Libraries Create Smart Spaces project. This is something we did at WebJunction with funding from IMLS and support from OCLC. WebJunction guided 15 small and rural libraries through a process where they reimagined how they're using their limited physical space and reconfiguring it around active learning. So active learning was sort of our design focus for that. We started the first cohort of this project in 2017 through 2018. It was so successful, we got supplemental funding, and we're now leading an additional 15 libraries. So we have tremendous success stories from the first round. I am going to go through just one of them. This is from the Madison Public Library in South Dakota, and just give you an example of how they use some of these discovery tools to help themselves and their communities think more broadly about possibilities. So one tool they used was called a wish tree, where you make a lovely graphic, you provide some of these cutout leaves, and you pose two questions. What do you like about Madison, and what do you think would make it better? And notice that there's nothing about the library in these questions. And the intention here is to not ask people about the library, because they tend to be very confined by their own conventional thinking. They say, we need more books, longer hours. So this is tapping into these broader aspirations. And then one of the other tools they use called a dot board, where you give them a set of choices, but it's really important to make the choices visual. So you're providing images of the choices, because visual images stimulate creativity in a completely different way from looking at text. And give them choices that it might not have occurred to them that these things could happen in the library. Some of our other participants said, you know, do you want a community garden at the library? Do you want an outdoor performance space? Do you want a kitchen in the library? So all these things start to get the community realizing there is a whole set of possibilities they probably hadn't thought of. And then in the experimentation phase, applying all these tools, ideation, sort of looking at all that community input and dissecting it, what's sort of the essence of what people are asking for. In this case, Madison Public Library realized they were hearing a lot about the teens in their community didn't feel like they had enough activities to keep them occupied, and they didn't really have a place for social engagement. So the library decided to focus on that. They did some very rudimentary prototyping, colored paper and clothespins, nothing fancy here, but it made it visible, and it allowed them to show the community what they were thinking, or their teens that they wanted to interact with. And then up here they did that action prototyping. So the teens actually, before the space ever took form, the teens staged a Harry Potter holiday party, which they completely organized and designed and delivered. It was such a smashing success. It really showed the library that the teens in their community had the capability and the energy and the commitment to really make use of a space in the library. And now, this was the former space, static shelves. Now it's nothing. Notice there's nothing fancy. It's not high tech. It's some tables and stools. But the important thing is the teens really own this space, and they are driving all the programming now. So our second example is about using design thinking for strategic planning. And this comes from the Salt Lake City Public Library, where the leadership there realized that how challenging it's getting to try to create a plan 3 to 5 years out for where you think the library will be and what you should do, that in this changing world, that process was just too rigid. It was too out of date. And they needed something that was more fluid and adaptable for what they describe as this deeply weird world that we're in. Whoop. So part of that process was, again, this discovery piece, really connecting with community and understanding more about their thoughts, their aspirations, what they wanted to do. So it's not just what is your community doing or interested in doing, but discovering what are they thinking about, and even more importantly, what are they feeling? So what are the emotions behind that, and how do they want to be treated? In particular, how can the library meet their desires for how they want to be treated? So it's this continual discovery, continually asking what are the needs and aspirations of our patrons and community. Now, so this resulted in the strategic roadmap, and note that this is not a plan, it is a flexible framework, and it allows for that continual experimentation and continual adaptation to the evolving needs of the community. So it's really letting go of long-range planning, but holding on to the values that underlie the library. So for Salt Lake City Public Library, the library is inclusive, open, kind, it's playful, it's curious, and everyone works together to improve the lives of community members. As a companion to that roadmap, they developed the field guide, and this is really to help staff understand their role in this strategic evolutionary planning process or a roadmap process, and to actually take more ownership of how they can individually enhance the customer experience. Admittedly, this whole design thinking process is messy. It's non-linear. It can feel really chaotic. But if you think of it as a journey and you make sure to include everyone on the journey, then you can really be effective and successful, which remains to be seen how it works, because this is fairly new, but I think it's very exciting. I recommend everybody watch the full webinar to really dig into the details. If you go to oc.lc/WJ webinars, you can find out a lot more about what they're doing. So as a creative problem-solving model, design thinking can also be applied to how you tell impactful library stories. Again, all those strategies that apply to really understanding and discovering your community are totally appropriate for making those connections and understanding how you can really communicate with the community in a more impactful and powerful way, because no community is monolithic. Like, every community is a whole web of individuals, each with their own hopes and fears and goals. And the more you can understand and personally connect with really realizing where people are coming from, what are their personal goals, what are the things that are getting in their way, the more the library can work with them to really provide ways that they can meet those goals and overcome their barriers. And when the library is doing that with people in the community, that really shapes the stories that you communicate back to them, and particularly to your stakeholders and decision makers. And please notice that I keep saying with community, because this is a real shift from providing things for them to working with them to really understand how you can meet what's needed in their lives. So this is actually a bit of a trailer for a bigger event. There's the America's Regional Council meeting in Phoenix in October this fall. And we are going to be offering a pre-conference workshop on how you can use design thinking to tell a more powerful story. I will be joined by colleagues Elizabeth Mills from the University of Washington iSchool and by Rachel Ivy Clark from the Syracuse University High School. And we will lead a very interactive workshop that will really get our participants to do some hands-on experimentation with the tools and really understand, hopefully acquire the mindset and understand how fluid the process is and how you can adapt it for your own library. So I hope you go to this URL, oc.lc/arc19, and register for the meeting, and in particular register for our pre-conference. It's going to be great. We're going to work together on that. And I want to thank you very much.